So Yesod wants Tiferet to put his hand where? On the Rosh of strength. But now we know that this is that Tiferet is also Israel. Yaakov Avinu is Israel, right? And what does Israel also spell? The letters of Israel also can be rearranged to be Lirosh. I have a head. I can think. Right? Which is why I'm saying Yadati. So finally, we can start to understand why Ephraim is placed before Menashe. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Live with the Times. My name is Maynard Breslow. So grateful for all of you, and I'm so grateful to be here. Today we are going over the third Aliyah in Parsha Vayechi, the last Parsha in Sefer Bereshit, and really excited about this one. A lot of good stuff here. So the last couple of days, it seems like we've been talking about the same thing over here, right? We've been talking about this coming blessing, this blessing that Yosef comes and brings Menashe and Ephraim to Yisrael, to Yaakov Avinu, and he wants to get them to give them a blessing here as right. Yaakov's getting older. It's the time here before he's going to pass, and it seems as though maybe he's lost his vision, he's lost his wisdom, all these things, right? And that's what it says here, right? A couple of days ago, we're saying Mi Eile, that Yaakov was saying Mi Eile, who are these? As if he doesn't know who they are, right? And then yesterday, right, Yosef puts them in a certain order, and Yaakov crosses his hands, and he's putting the right hand over on Ephraim, right? So today, finally, Yaakov Avinu actually gives the blessing, right? It's a blessing that we give to our sons on Friday night, right? Where it's Yesimcha Elokim Ephraim and Menashe, that Hashem should bless you like Ephraim and Menashe, right? And so the main opinions, I guess, on why even we choose Ephraim and Menashe of all the people to bless our sons after, main opinions say that actually, if you look in the Torah, that the first brothers to actually get along, right? There's no strife between the two. There's nothing there that suggests either overtly or even in the oral tradition that these two had any sort of beef with each other, right? So this is the first thing. The second thing is that they both were raised here in Golus, in the darkness, and they maintained their purity, right? They maintained their traditions. They maintained their kedusha, so to speak. And so this is obviously something that we want to bless our children with moving forward, right? We always want them to maintain who they are, right? And especially if we're amongst the nations, as they were, right? But we see that before he gives a blessing that Yosef gets upset over here, right? He says, no, this isn't the one. You're putting it on the wrong guy. This is the Bechor. You're supposed to put the right hand on the Bechor. And you give him the blessing first. Right, and what does Yaakov say? He says, Yadati beni yadati. I know, my son, I know. Right, so all this stuff, it seems kind of strange. It seems like it's just a couple of guys like arguing about nepotism, like, oh, you should give it to this guy because he's first, and the other one's like, no, I don't know. And you can even look and think, oh, maybe poor Yaakov Avinu Nebuch, he's lost it a little bit and everything. But really, under the surface, it's a Kabbalistic discussion on how we should raise and bless our children, right? Not just on these major opinions, like I said, but what actually are we saying every Friday night? It'd be nice to know, right? So before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, and I hope you're enjoying. And let's take a second here to pray that Hatufim should be returned speedily, immediately, and all Israel should be all reunited. So, right, so whatever, we'll keep it going here. So as I mentioned, this is really a discussion of Yosef versus Yaakov, right? But is it really Yosef versus Yaakov? Really, we're talking about Yesod versus Tiferet on how we should raise and bless our children, right? Yosef, as we know, represents the Sephira of Yesod, of the foundation. And a lot of stuff to get in here, and we'll be talking about a lot of like kind of deeper concepts, and they'll try and give it over as practically, right? For anybody who hasn't learned this kind of stuff right? Yosef has many names, and Yaakov has many names, right? Yosef is also called the upper righteous one, the Tzaddik Elyon in Kabbalistic terms. And in Kabbalistic terms, he's also called the small Vav. The Vav is the era, which will come into practice here as we learn. But he's also, keep in mind, the sixth sephira of the Zeir Anpin. Now, we know that there's 10 total sephirot. There's the higher one, right? And this is like Hakma Bina Das, which is where you got Chabad. These are the first three. And then down below, there's another 7. And the first 6 of those, right, corresponding to Chesed, Tiferes, Gevura, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod, these correspond to the Zeir Anpin, and below that is Malchus. Right, we live in the world of Malchus, actually, but there's a certain aspect of the Zeir Anpin, and so Yosef is the sixth sephira in that Zeir Anpin, right? But also we learn from the Gate of Unity in chapter 36 of all chapters, right? Gate of Unity was written by Rav Dov Ber Shnuri, who was the second Lubavitcher Rebbe, that Yesod loses its power when it loses its cool. And it says, right, that it's brought down, it says in the Torah specifically that Yosef was what? He was Yafet Torah ve'Yafet Mareh. That he was beautiful in form and beautiful in appearance. Right? He had a beautiful build and he was good looking. And so what's the acronym for Yafet Torah ve'Yafet Mareh? It's Yatom, which means orphan, which means that he had no ima, right? As we know that a Yesod, or I should say Yosef, lost his ima, right? He was raised without ima. And so the Gate of Unity goes on to say that Yesod is short and becomes concealed during the birth of emotions, right? It says he's a small vav, and Yesod is short and becomes concealed during the birth of emotions. So that when emotions are aroused, Yesod loses its cool, and when emotions are aroused, the intellect withdraws, right? Emotions take hold, right? The heart takes over, and the brain can't think anymore. So Yaakov now represents Tiferet, right? He represents harmony, right? Whereas Yesod means grounded, foundation, right? Tiferet is moving. Right, it's moving. So if you look at it from like a tree, right, or from this kind of level, the foundation. This is like the tree trunk. This is what's holding the tree down into place. Right, this is the foundation, and the tiferet are like the leaves that can move from place to place. Right, they're harmonious, as you see. Right, people who whatever higher states of consciousness or altered states of consciousness can sometimes say that the trees, it's like they're breathing, right? The leaves are kind of moving in unison. They're moving together, they're moving where the wind's taking them. They're moving where they need to be. And this is also Tiferet. Not that the just blows in the wind or whatever, but it needs to move where it needs to be at certain places. And so this is in contrast to the Yesod that is always stationary. The Yesod doesn't move anywhere, right? Now also with Yaakov Avinu, Yaakov is also called the Vav, right? So Yesod was a small Vav. Yosef was a small Vav. Now here we're saying that Yaakov is Vav, regular Vav. As the Zohar says that the letter of truth, of Emes, is the letter Vav, which is the middle line that includes both Chesed and Gevura, both kindness and judgment, right? That's in the middle of these two, right? Whereas Chesed is on one side, Gevura is on the other side. We know that Tiferet is this higher level, as we know that, people, they want to, we live in a world today where everybody's talking about left wing, right wing, and everybody's excited to say, oh, I'm left wing, oh, I'm right wing, oh, I'm left, I'm right. When really, neither of these are truth, right? Neither of these are truth. That truth is the middle. Truth is knowing when to move to certain places, when to be left-leaning, when to be right-leaning, but really to be mostly in the middle. Right, and we know that also that the Vav is also the middle line that goes straight through. As you look on the tree of life on the Sefirot, right? It goes which ones are in the middle? As we mentioned all those Sefirot earlier. Dat is in the middle, Tiferet is in the middle, and Yesod is in the middle, right? So Yesod is on the bottom. In the middle there of those two is Tiferet, and on the top is Yesod. So still also there's this middle here, but these are connecting. The middle line is this middle line. And as also as we know that Yaakov is truth. He's Emes himself. Right? It says, give truth to Yaakov, Hesel Avraham. So the Zohar also says that letter, the Ot, Vav, this is the aspect of Yaakov, who is the middle line, the middle beam that passes through from one end to the other. Right? We mentioned that Yesod is short. It can't pass to the other end. Right? So Yaakov was saying to Yesod, when Yesod started complaining, Tiferet was saying to Yesod, no. Yesod, I have the truth and I have the das. Right? I have the truth, I am truth. And I have the das, I'm able to reach the das. I'm able to reach knowledge. I'm able to reach this higher wisdom, this higher spiritual wisdom that you can't access. You're short. You can't get up there. Right? I'm here in the middle. I'm the combining piece. You have to rely on me for this. Another name for Yaakov Avinu is the Zer Anpin. Right? So we mentioned the Yesod is a piece of the Zer Anpin, right? He's a sixth of the Zer Anpin, right? And so he's a sixth, right? He has the letter 6 in it. He is the sixth one specifically. But Yaakov is not only Tiferet, but he's also is the Zer Anpin. And the Zer Anpin has 6 different directions, right? Up, down, left, right, forward, backwards. Right? So there's 6 different directions, and each of those 6 different directions have their own 6 sefirot, which means that what is 6 times 6? It's 36. I mentioned, obviously, the gates of unity, this chapter 36. But 36, what else is 36? Right? The word in Gematria, one of the words that come up for 36 is Eile. Eile. Where does Eile come in? 2 days ago, when Yaakov Avinu was talking to Yosef, and he said, Mi'ele. And we look at it and we say, oh, poor guy, he can't even recognize his grandchildren. How is he supposed to? He's the guy we're supposed to look up to. He's not saying, who are these people? He's saying, Mi'ele. Who is Eile? Who is the 36? Meaning that both of you come from Yesod. Both of you come from Yesod. Both of you come from Yosef. So you both have 6. Who has the extra 6? Right? Mi'ele. Is it Ephraim or is it Menashe? Is it Menashe or is it Ephraim? This was the question. And so later on, when Yosef starts complaining and saying, no, you're supposed to put Menashe first, Yosef responds with, Yadati beni Yadati. I know who it is. I know who Eile is. Right? I have the truth and I have the das. Right? I know who the son of Das is. I know who the 6 is. Right? So talking about this aspect of Menashe before Ephraim, it wasn't just some talk about nepotism and or order, birth order, right? I mean, what it means is that the Yesod wanted to place the emphasis in the blessings when blessing children on the Bechor. The Bechor meaning the strength, right? As in the first of the strength. The first is the strength of my vigor, right? That Yosef was saying that we need to be strong. We need to be strong. Our children need to be strong, right? We can't, if you want to survive, if you want to live on, we have to have strong children. We can't have weak children. We're just letting people walk over them and letting people influence them and doing all these kind of things. They have to be strong. That's the main thing, right? So especially amongst our enemies and especially in a strange land, right? But what did the gates of unity say? It says that there can be no offspring without an additional influence of Nimoichin, intellect from Abba and Ima, which is brought by maturation of the Keter, Chokmah, Bina, and Das of Zer Anpin. Okay, this is like a mouthful, right? Basically, it's saying that there can be no new intellect, right? Who's coming with the intellect? Yaakov's coming with the intellect. Why? Because there can be no new intellect. This is a chiddush. This is something here. Unless there's Abba and Ima. And what did we say earlier? We said that Yosef, Yesod, is a yatom. He is an orphan. He's lacking an Ima. He's lacking his Ima, which means that he cannot have the influence here. in this regard, right? He's short and he becomes concealed during the birth of emotions. He can't reach up to that place. And when emotions are aroused, intellect withdraws. So now he's getting worked up. He says, no, this is, it's not that he doesn't have intellect, it's that now he's getting worked up. Right? He says, no, this isn't the right person. This is the right person. This is the one you're supposed to be blessing, right? But Tiferet had a different idea on how we should bless the children, in what order we should bless the children, right? In terms of strength, right? Strength couldn't come first. Why? So the Midrash Tanhuma relates that Shimon turns to Yosef defiantly, right? Back in Vayigash, Shimon turns to Yosef and he says, yo, you're going to lock me up? You think you can lock me up? You can't lock me up. Go ahead and try. Shimon and Levi, me and Levi, we destroyed an entire city. You think I'm scared of you? You think I'm scared of you or your people? Right? Do whatever you wish. I challenge you to imprison me. Right? So Yosef ordered 70 of Paro's strongest men to arrest Shimon. And what happened as they were approaching, Shimon let forth a roar. And when they heard the sound, they fell to the ground and their teeth were shattered. The lion roared, the fierce lion howled. Yet the teeth of the young lions are broken. Right? So now, with nobody else around him, who do you ask? His right-hand man. Menashe was his firstborn. It was his strength. And he had raised him and groomed him in this way, right? In a way that was closer than Ephraim, so to speak, in a different way, with strength, right? Leading with strength. So he turns to him, to Menashe, to complete what the Egyptians couldn't do. So what does it say? The Midrash continues that Menashe arose at once, and he struck a single blow, dragged Shimon into prison, and put him in chains. Whereupon Shimon called out to his brothers, would you say this was a blow of an Egyptian? It's none other than the blow of one of our father's house. He said, nobody could do this. How is this possible that this was able to happen? Nobody could do this. When Joseph's brothers saw that Menashe was able to drag Shimon into prison and bind him in chains, they became terrified. They're not worried about anybody. You think they're scared of some viceroy? You think they're scared of people? But now they're saying, wait a minute, this is a different animal. This is something different than we haven't faced before. So these incredible feats of strength are limited to Shimon and Menashe. These people have these different kinds of strength. So Menashe represents strength, is said. But what happened? That because of this act, he took things a little bit too far. He roughed him up a little bit too much. Right? It says that Menashe caused the tribal ancestors to rend their garments. They were scared. They were terrified. Right? And he tore Shimon's garments and he beat him up. Therefore, his heritage was to be divided, and he received half of his portion was in Transjordan, half in Eretz Yisrael. It's Bereshit Rabbah. So Yesod wants Tiferet to put his hand where? On the Rosh of strength. But now we know that this is that Tiferet is also Israel. Yaakov Avinu is Israel, right? And what is Israel also spell? The letters of Israel also can be rearranged to be Li Rosh. I have a head. I can think, right? Which is why I'm saying Yedati. So we can finally start to understand why Ephraim is placed before Menashe, right? Ephraim, if you remember, when his name was given because Yosef said, God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction, right? So fruitful, what is fruitful? Fruitful is children, right? What are we doing? We're blessing our children, right? We want to increase this blessing. We want to have more and more children. We want them to be increasing here in the world. But what does it say of Menashe's name? Right, Menashe, it says that God has caused me to forget all my toil and all my father's house. Right, that we see this as a positive thing. Right, he came here. He was in Eretz Yisrael. He was in Mitzrayim. He had been taken out of his family. And he had kind of moved on, right? Rebbe Nachman even says that forgetting at certain times is a good thing. When a person forgets their failures, right, they make shuvah, and then instead of remembering, oh my gosh, how silly, how stupid I am, all these things, and saying all kinds of names, they can forget, listen, I made shuvah, I'm moving on with my life. Or if a person experienced trauma, Instead of continually rehashing, repeating that trauma, refeeling it in their body and in their life, and repeating those cycles, they can forget. That forgetfulness in this aspect is a good thing. So it doesn't mean necessarily that Yosef completely erased the memories of his experiences, but that God allowed him to set aside all his troubles and all his suffering. However, it says that he was forgetfulness, that Menashe was forgetful, that it was able to forget all of his toil. And we know that Menashe, what happened? He acted cruelly towards Shimon. He went a little bit too far with it, right? And what does the sages say, right? Whoever does not have das is cruel, such as children or the like. However, the more one increases his das, the more he will feel merciful, right? So what was here? It was that Menashe lacked das, just like Yesod lacked das, right? Just like Yosef lacked das. He wasn't able to reach up here when he's feeling emotion. That's what he reached. That's what she taught over to Menashe. He lacked das. And when we're blessing our children, we need to bless them with das. Likutei Moharan, Rebbe Nachman says that the trait of compassion is dependent upon das, right? As we're saying here, that the more you increase das, the more mercy you'll feel. That first you get das, and then you feel compassion. Someone who has das has compassion. This is because anger, losing your cool, getting emotional, this is the opposite of compassion. It's a result of foolishness, and it results in more chaos, more craziness that you then have to pick up later on. As it's written, that anger rests in the bosom of fools, right? So this is an aspect of foolishness, of forgetfulness, right? Which means that strength, it's not that strength isn't important. It is important, right? This whole argument isn't an argument like it was with Yaakov and Esav, where Yitzchak came and gave all the blessing to Yaakov and there's nothing left for Esav. Right? And it's not even the same thing as though they're not working together. They are working together, right? They do have unity, right? They emphasize unity. They emphasize that we have to be together with our brothers and sisters in diaspora and in Eretz Yisrael, right? So these things are true, right? Yaakov's not saying that this stuff isn't necessary. What he's saying is that strength is important, yes, but you want to put strength, you want to put Menashe in front of Ephraim, in front of wisdom and compassion, in front of das and mercifulness. So the Midrash is teaching that perhaps Yosef had the right to do what he did in terms of bringing in Menashe, or in terms of locking up Shimon, that what he did was a good idea. What was the problem? He used Menashe. He taught him a bad lesson. He taught him a lesson that it's okay to beat up your uncle. He taught him a lesson that it's okay to have this unity. He taught him that it's okay to use your strength even when you're not cool, even when you're not happy, even when you've lost your cool and you're angry and your emotions are acting out of whack. And these are not the messages that we need to teach our children. When we enter conflict, it's the opposite, right? The message Menashe received was one of lack of unity with his extended family, and perhaps an exaggerated sense of dedication to immediate family. Clearly, this was not Yosef's intention, but the abuse perpetrated by Menashe was paid back in the future, as we see by Menashe being split, his family being split, half on one side of the Jordan, half in Eretz Yisrael. This is by Rabbi Ari Kam that he gave that right there. So as we know, Menashe, he took his job a little bit too seriously. He got put in a position and taught a lesson that maybe shouldn't have been taught by his father. And he went overboard with punishing Shimon. He was cruel and foolish in his delivery. He had that aspect of forgetfulness. He forgot who he was, the role he was playing, and who he was playing with, that it was his uncle. So for sure, Menashe can't lead the way. This argument's done. But how do we know that Ephraim should lead the way? Maybe they're both lacking this aspect of das. How do we know that Ephraim has das? Very good. So Rabbi Yoshua Gorn, of blessed memory, he brings the Balaturim. And he brings the Balaturim in verse 20 of today's Aliyah. It says, "Vayivorachem bayom hahu le'mor." It says le'mor. The Balaturim says that le'mor here has an unnecessary vav. Doesn't have to have a vav here. And the Balaturim says that it represents that there's 6 different situations where Ephraim comes before Menashe. He also says that there are 6 righteous judges who came from Ephraim. And he also says that in Yosef's dream, Going all the way back, chapter 37, verse 8, what happens? Yosef gives over this dream, and what are his brothers' responses? They say, Hamaloch timloch aleinu? Well, you're going to rule over us now? Well, you're better than us? You are going to be our king? Is that what's going on here? And it's mentioned, Hamaloch should have a vav, and it doesn't have a vav. Right? So earlier, we said that Lamor has a vav, shouldn't have a vav. Previously, it's Hamaloch, will you rule, doesn't have a vav. Right? The kings represent Menashe. As it says that there are wicked kings that came from Menashe. This was the reason given that Mi'ele, another reason given for Mi'ele, why he said Mi'ele, is because one opinion is that he saw that they were going to be, as we mentioned yesterday, that there were going to be wicked people who descended from them. Right? And we have to see the good in people. So there are wicked kings who came from Menashe, and specifically kings, rulers. And this was first, right? In the verse, it says this first. They let their emotions get the best of them. The kings, what happened? The kings, they didn't rule like kings should. They forgot that they actually serve the people. They forget that they are actually supposed to be good to the people. They disconnected themselves from their brothers. All right? And then how does the verse continue? It says, Imoshel timshol banu. Right? So you're going to judge us. You're going to be our king, and you're going to judge over us. You're going to reign over us. And this one has a vav, right? So this represents Ephraim. The Baal Trim says that this represents Ephraim who had judges. That Ephraim had righteous judges. So whereas Menashe had these wicked kings, as we say, there were 6 righteous judges that came from Ephraim. And so we see here that in the verse where Menashe reigns is mentioned first, he doesn't have a vav, and the kings are wicked. And Ephraim comes second, and he has a vav. So over here, later on in our verse where it says, Lemor has a vav. Who is it? It's Ephraim. Ephraim has the vav. Right? So when he was saying Mi'ele, who's the one with the extra 6? It's Ephraim. Ephraim has the extra vav. And so, but what else is vav? Vav, as we know, is 6. Right? Rebbe Nachman says that vav is also Torah, because vav is 6, and Torah is 6, as the tablets measured 6 by 6 handbreadths. Right? That they were measured, they were squares, and they were 6 by 6. Right? So when we see vav, when we see 6, we see Torah. So what did Ephraim have that Menashe didn't have? He had Das, he had Torah. Right? So this wasn't to say that Menashe wasn't great in Torah. What it is to say that Ephraim led him in Torah and he had more Das. Right? He put Torah ahead of his strength. So what Yaakov Avinu was teaching us here is how to bless our children. Right? That we should bless our children with Torah that is going to lead to Das, that is going to lead to compassion, and that they should be blessed with strength. Right? That they should have all these things. If we have all these things, if we have Torah, Das, mercy, unity, strength, we'll be able to survive and be together in the worst situations, wherever we go, wherever we travel. And so it should be true as well that for us, practically, we should be zoiche to put this lesson into practice. And that we should be zoiche to raise children who are raised in Torah, who are learning Torah. And a person can only give over Torah if they're learning Torah. So if you're a parent out there, you got to learn Torah. I'm glad you're here. I'm trying my best too. What can I say? None of us are perfect. And we should be zoiche to raise children. We should be zoiche to learn Torah ourselves the right kind of way, the good kind of way, lishma, without ego, with simcha, so that we should be able to that our kids will see that we love Torah, that we learn Torah with happiness, that we enjoy Torah, that it's something that we put emphasis on in our own life. Our kids will be attracted to it as well. You can't just put the kid in a hater and get this, oh, kid, you got to go learn. And you yourself, you don't like Torah. They don't ever see you learning Torah. It's not going to work. They don't see that it brings Abba and Ima happiness. Right? So we should be zoiche to be able to give over that happiness, that our kids should be able to see the happiness, the love that we have in Torah, which will lead to compassion, lead to das, lead to compassion. with strength and have a unity of all of Am Yisrael reunited with each other here in Eretz Yisrael and around the world, and the unity of the entire world. There should be no more fighting, no more infighting, no more outfighting. And this way we're going to see really everybody reunited. And everybody put aside everything, everybody's differences, and we'll see the coming Moshiach speedily. The 36, Lamed Vav, here with the coming Moshiach, the third Beis HaMikdash, speedily, right now, L'chaim.